Hello students, in this class we are going to perform selection operation on SQLite databases. Now if you have been following us from our recent videos, in the last video we created some kind of layout like this, as you can see right here, and in this layout we got two values from the user. One was customer age and one was customer name, and whenever I click on insert button, the data was stored in my SQLite databases. So this was how my table was looking when I ended up my last video. So I've inserted around 5 or 6 to 7 rows here. Now in this class we are going to perform selection operation, or we can also call it retrieve operation. So without further ado, let's start getting data from our databases. So in this class, if you remember from the last video, we had created a class named as DB helper, which was extending SQLite open helper database class. If you remember, if you haven't watched that video, I would recommend you guys to go find that video in my playlist. I will also put the description, put the link in my description, so that you can be comfortable with this thing. So in that class, if you remember, I created an on create method, and then I created an on upgrade method, which are basically primary things you need to create both of them whenever you are using SQLite Open Helper class. Then I created a class for myself, which was, I think, add a record method. Using this method, I inserted data inside my database. Now what am I going to do now is I'm going to create one more method here, which is going to be get record method. Now what is this method going to do? This method is going to fetch the data from the database, from this table actually. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to make some modifications in this application. How? I'm going to create another edit box, edit text here, where I'm going to get some data from the user, and I'll create another button here, and whenever I click on this button, this data will be searched inside my database, and based on that data I can get some rows or row from that database. And I want to show that here using a toast message, or you can create some text to use here too. So this is what I'm trying to do here. So I can explain it right here, but I think it would be better if I try to write code for you guys directly. Now let's switch to our Android Studio from here. So let's say this is my Android Studio. You can see the layout here. As I said, I'm going to put some more things here. So I created another edit text here. I can give it some ID, like let's say I gave it et get. Simply this is what I'm using to get data from my database. So I'll give some hint here. For example, I'm writing customer name. Let's say I'll get the data based on customer name, and I'll modify its bit to match parent. And I think I should also put the constraints here. I don't need to focus on the styling of this layout. We just need to do the primary thing that we are here to do. So my edit text is ready. I can also put some button here. I'll create a button here. I'll put the constraints first, and the top constraint, yeah, and I'm good to go. I can write some things here. I can modify the ID from here. Let's say I want this ID to be show button, and then I want this text to be, for example, I want to say here show data. Now whenever I write something here and I click on it, this data will be searched in my database, and based on this data, based on this customer name, I'll get a record here. So I think I'm good to go from here. I can go back to my main activity. This is how the code looks like from the previous class. This method, or this buttons implementation, is actually the calling to the DB helpers on in add record method. So for that I will make some references here. First I'll add the new edit text to my edit text list of edit text here. Let's say I'm giving this name edit get, and I'll give my give a name to my button, which is show button. Now I can make some references to them here. Let's say show button equal to find view by id r dot id dot show button. This is where it is. And then I have my et get equal to find view by id r dot id dot et get. It's right here. Okay, after that I'll create my show button implementation by calling set on click listener and creating this anonymous class on view on click listener. So before trying to do something inside here, I need to jump to my DB helper to create a method that is going to retrieve data from our database. Now to create that method, I'm going to write something here, get record, and I'm going to generate a string here which is going to be, let's say, cname. Now you might find something new here, which is what? This cursor. Now what is a cursor? Cursor is simply a pointer which is pointing towards a single row of our table. So in our case, let's say we had this row, so a cursor can point towards any one of them. So I'm going to take the help of this cursor to point towards the data that I am trying to search in my database. Now, so what do I need to do right here? First of all, the basic thing that I need is an instance of SQLite database, and I'm going to write this dot get readable class database. Now I can also have an alternative solution here by writing get writable database, but as I'm just trying to retrieve data from my database, I'm not trying to write data to my database. I can simply write get readable databases here. Okay, now after that I'm going to create the query that I'm going to be using to fetch the data from my database. So what's that query is going to be? Let's say I'm going to write select star from the table. I can write the table name here. Where is it? It's right here, customer table. So I'll simply get out of it. I'll write some pluses concatenation here. I'll say customer table is right here, and after the concatenation I can come back inside my query, and just beware of these spaces. These are very crucial things here. Select star from customer table, where now I'll write my column name here. My column name is also defined above there. I think my column names are column id, column customer name, column customer age. So as I'm performing a search based on this one, I'm going to write here, I'll write here column customer name is right here. Now after that I'm going to again come inside my query. What have I written here? Select star from customer table, where column name is what? This one. So I need to write the query, and then here I'm going to write the cname that I'm going to search in my database, and then I need to perform some concatenation here, which is some crucial thing here, but just do whatever I'm trying to do here. Now my query is completed. Now what am I going to do here? I'm going to create a cursor, and let's say I named it a cursor equal to, now using this instance of SQLite database DB, I can call a method named sRawQuery. Now what will this contain? This will first contain the query that I've created here, which is Q, and then I can just simply write here null for now. I can simply write here null for now. We'll get to it when we grow a little bit in our SQLite databases. So for now I've created a cursor, and I've created a instance of SQLite databases using which I'm calling my rawQuery method, and I'm putting my query right here, which is defined right here. So after that I need to return my cursor, and I'm good to go here. Now my method is completed here. Whenever this method will be called, it will get some string here, and based on this string will be searched in my database, and the database and the row where this string is found is going to be stored in my cursor, or the address of that record will be stored in my cursor, and we will return this to the callee method. Now where am I going to call it? I'm going to call it from here. So how am I going to call it? I'm going to create a database helper instance. Let's say I call it db, equal to new db helper, and I can just write main activity dot this. I need to pass the context here as I have created the constructor in my db helper. So using this db helper, what am I going to do? Before that, I need to create a cursor. For example, I named the cursor here too. Now what am I going to do? Using this method, I'm going to call the get record method, and inside it I'm going to write the thing that I've read from the user, which is stored where et get dot get text dot toString. Now what am I doing here? I'm calling this get record method, and I'm passing the user input data inside this get record method. Now this will be searched in the database. Now after this, I can simply create a condition if cursor dot move to next. This means that I'm going to find out that whether there is some record in my cursor or not, and if there is some record, I can simply, this will return 1, and if the if statement gets 1, this condition will be executed, this statement will be executed. Now I can simply create a couple of strings. Let's say I created string 1, which is going to store c dot get string, or sorry, cursor dot get string. Now I'm going to write the indexes of my columns here. If I write 0 here, the first column will be stored as a string in my s1, and then for example, I'm going to create one more string s2 equal to cursor dot get string, and inside this I'm going to write 1, and then I'm going to create string s3 which equals cursor dot get string, and I'm going to write 2 here. Now what will happen? This string will store the first column of my table, this will store the second column, and this will store the third column. Now I've got all 3 of my columns inside these 3 strings, so I can simply toast them on screen by doing this. Let's say s1 plus s2 plus s3. Now I think I'm good to go here. Sorry, this is not s3, this is se, so I'll modify that. Now I think I'm good to go. Now if I try to run it, this shall get me the 3 columns. Now my app is, I think, running, so let's insert some more records here. For example, I'm going to write John, and I'm going to give him age 12. Now I click on insert. Now both of them has been inserted in my database. Now if I try to find out that whether John is still in my database or not, I can simply write here John, and then I can click on show data button, and look, 8 is the ID for John, then it was his name, and then it was his age. So this is how you retrieve data from the databases. Now you can also show that data in 2 or 3 text views here. You can also do that, but for the sake of simplicity, I just did this here. I just used a toast message here. I can do it again. 8 is the ID, then we have got the name, and then 12 was the age of John. So this is how you are simply going to retrieve your data from your database. So I think this is it for now. In next class, we will try to fetch multiple data from my database, and we will try to show it using a list view or a recycler view. So stay with us until then, and make sure to subscribe and like this video if it somehow helped you, and we are really happy to help you. And if there are any questions, you can definitely email us, or you can also put that question or query inside the comment box. We'll keep in touch. We'll get in contact to you as soon as possible.